Why can't government spending be the cause of sustained hyperinflation? Let's take a look. So first off, what is sustained hyperinflation? Well, sustained is something that lasts for a longer period of time than just something very short. And what is hyperinflation? Well, it's high levels of inflation. So going from 2 to 5% is not hyperinflation. We're talking much higher levels of inflation. Why can't government spending lead to sustained hyperinflation? We can create inflation through increases in government spending or drops in tax rates, which stimulate the economy and can lead to inflation. But why cannot this lead to high levels of inflation and for a long period of time? Well, if you think about it, if let's say we're in a well-functioning economy, we're at potential output, and we have inflation levels that are like normal 2%. And then the government decides to stimulate the economy. For some reason, it just wants to produce a lot more. So it increases spending or decreases taxes. In any case, whether it's increases in spending or decreases in taxes, any of those things on its own or the combination of the two leads to a situation where there is a greater budget deficit. Because if you had a balanced budget where taxes were equal to government spending, if you increase government spending and you keep taxes as is, well, you have a deficit that incurs. Or if you start from the same situation but you drop taxes, you still have that same deficit. So over time, the government would not be able to do this for a long period of time because it would run out of money or ability to get more money in the process. So fiscal policy has a limit to how much you can borrow or overspend over time. You could do this for a certain amount of time, but at some point, the government will struggle getting more money. So you could see some European countries in the past had big budget problems, and that led to a situation where they couldn't borrow anymore, or they could only borrow at very high rates. So this limits how much you could use fiscal policy, this loss of money over time. Monetary policy does not have that same limit that fiscal policy does. Because monetary policy, whether you're talking about keeping interest rates low or increasing the amount of money in circulation, money supply, which creates more money and more spending potential, more borrowing potential, well, that there is no limit. If you started with a certain size monetary base and you double it, you could print more and more money if you have control over that within a country. So there is no limit to increasing the money supply. And if you look at the graphs that we have in this class, well, all historic times where you see massive increases in price level, you have that same increase in money supply. That is the sole cause of hyperinflation over time. And then to come back to both of the fiscal policy or monetary policy, the beauty of monetary policy, which is also bad because it could lead to inflation problems, is that even if you're in a country where you have a budget problem and you would normally be restricted to not being able to do anything to help out your economy that's in recession because you can't borrow more or you can't drop taxes even further, well, you could always use monetary policy if you have access to that tool. But to use monetary policy, you need to have control over your central bank. Therefore, you need to have your own currency that is not fixed to another currency. So countries like Canada can do this. England can do this. But if you think of a country like France, who is part of the European Union, it has to be an agreement between the European Union member nations, what's going on with interest rates there. It's not just one country that decides because you don't have that power. You lose that power. And that's one of the main reasons why in the past, when England joined the EU, it chose not to adopt the EU currency, the euro, and kept its own currency because it wanted to keep control over its monetary policy. So although it can lead to hyperinflation problems if mismanaged, it is an extra tool that could be used to deal with recessions that does not require changes in spending or tax cuts. So hopefully that clarifies hyperinflation problem, how it's a monetary problem, and also the benefits of monetary policy, that you're not restricted as much as fiscal policy. Catch you guys on the next one. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.